Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. Last week we made a bracelet for Mother's Day, and this week's project is going to be a pendant. So same piece of burl that I cut last week. I've got it hot melt glued onto a faceplate. I have a big defect in here that I don't want in this pendant, so I'm hopefully going to get that turned out. Then we're going to try and make a jig that will allow us to make these things repeatably. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I'm a big fan of making jigs and things to simplify processes. So we're going to round this up and see how things look, see how we get around this void, and we'll start cranking out this pendant. So we pop that right off of the hot melt glue just as easily as that. Not quite round, like a little flat spot here, so I have to take the diameter down just a little bit. But not only am I going to take it down to make it round, I'm going to take it down to a specific size that will work with the Forstner bit that I have. So I'm going to make it round first and then measure it. We're round all the way now. Now I'm going to measure the diameter. So I'm at 2 3/4 right now. I have a Forstner bit that's 2 5/8. So when I put a nice rolled edge on this, I'll be able to size it to 2 5/8, and you'll see why here a little later on in the video. Okay, so two things I'm going to do now. I'm going to roll this edge to make a nice smooth edge, get it down to 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to cut the back off it a little bit to reveal more of the back side. And that's just going to make it easier so that when I sand it the first time, I can sand the face, the outside edge, and in quite a distance on the back side. Then I'll flip it and turn the front off, and I won't have to be having access to this outside edge, I hope. Okay, once again now I'm just going to double check the width. Alright, so hopefully this explanation will make sense here and you can see what I'm trying to get to here. So I've taken a scrap piece of elm 2-inch and I mounted it to a faceplate and turned it around. And of course I found my center, which is right here. And then what I've done, now my center on this piece is going to be the center of the hole. So when I offset this piece that we just turned, regardless of where I place it, this is where the center is going to be if I remount it in the same place that it was before, which I'm going to do. I've marked it here, I've marked the faceplate, so I know where my screw holes will line back up again. Now I could have turned a tenon on this and put it in a 4-jaw chuck as well. But again, I like to try and do things for people who don't have some of that gear. So you could do this exact same thing with the faceplate, as a matter of fact. It just would have been a matter of mounting. You could have trued it up between centers, mounted it to a faceplate with a hot melt glue block, the same as I did when I started out, and turned this far off of a hot melt glue block. What I've done is I know my outside diameter is going to be 2 5/8, and this I'm going to put a 1/4 inch hole in it, but I'm going to taper into it. So this is a 1/2 inch hole drawn in there. So I moved offset to this center point with a compass, and I drew a circle. I drew my 1/2 inch hole here first, actually, and then I moved offset it to where I got the amount that I wanted above the hole, and I drew a circle with the center point being here. So this is where this piece of wood's going to sit on the lathe. It's going to turn off center, but this center is going to be, this circle here will be in the center. And so once I cut a recess in this with my 1 5/8 Forstner bit, I'll be able to set this down inside of it, and I'll be able to turn the hole out from one side, take it back out, turn it over, and finish it off on the other side. Just have to remember to realign it in exactly the same place when I take it out as I had it the first time. So both times that has to be oriented exactly right, or my hole will be off-centered. So I'm going to take this over to this drill press. I'm going to drill an 1.5" hole in there. I'm going to have to go in about 1/4 inch deep in order to catch this outside edge, which is what I want to catch on it. And then when we do it, we'll just hot melt glue it in. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'm going to come back and finish sanding this up. I'm going to do this now so that I can be sure that this fits on here. And then once I have this one time, I can use this for any 2 5/8 inch ones that I make in the future. And you can make as many of these as you want. And these things, again, there is no right or wrong. You can have a big hole, small hole. They can be thick, thin, whatever diameter that you want them to be out of whatever wood you want them to be. This is, again, just some scrap burl that I had that was way too nice to throw away. And so we're going to do this. So I'll bring it back when I'm fitting this to this. Okay, so I've got this hole drilled off center now. And it is almost going to fit, but not quite. So I'm just going to take a tiny little bit more off the outside. Probably when I sand it, it'll be the right size. And I actually may try that. So this has got a really good finish on it now, so I'm going to start with probably 240. All right, so now you can see we fit in. And that's all that had to come off that. Okay, so I'm going to finish sand up this face. And I'm going to sand a little bit more on here. All right, so I'm all sanded up here to 800 grit right now. It's got a nice finish on it. It's got the right contour here that I want. But I have made a change of plans here. This is the first one of these I made, but I am going to do something different than what I was initially intending to do. I'm actually going to part this off the same as I did intend to do, but I'm going to build a second jig, and I'm going to build it with the 5/8 inch or 2 5/8 inch hole in the center. And I will turn this face and finish it off. So off camera, I've turned another block that I'm going to turn the center into, so that it'll allow me to turn the opposite face of the pendant. So all I've done is taken another piece of this this old scrap elm and put it on here between centers. I turned a tenon on this end, and rather than drill this out with the drill press, I'm going to put it on the 4-jaw chuck, and I'm going to cut the 2 5/8 because the chances of this being lined up perfectly between this tenon and then trying to drill this is almost zero. So I want my circle to be perfectly centered. That way, if I use the tenon on the 4-jaw chuck, I'll be perfectly centered. I just rounded these edges over so that when I'm working on there, there's not going to be an edge that may potentially hit your hand. So it's going to mark the center on this. And we're going 1 5/8, so I need to be at, or 2 5/8, so I need to be 1 5/16, which is right here. Now I'm going to make it just a little under on my circle. So I wanted to make this so it had a concave back in it, a concave hole, and then a flat ledge on the outside edge, and that would accommodate a few different shapes of pendants. So, but one thing I was really sticky on is making sure that the diameter was bang on, so there was no slack in it. And you'll see here in a second that I actually got just a 32nd or less too big on this hole. You see that little bit of play. And so I just peeled off the front face of this again and redid the exact same steps until I got a fit here that was good in a few minutes. And the reason for that is that once, if it's surrounded on the outside
And all you have to worry about is it coming out from the front. It's much easier to hold it with a very little amount of glue. And less glue is better, obviously, in terms of taking it off and in terms of it being in your way.
Alright, we got a good fit now. Alright, I'm just going to put a couple spots of hot melt glue on this, and then we'll finish this off. Okay, so I got this in with 4 spots of hot melt glue. It's in there nice and solid, or appears to be. And this will come off easily with rubbing alcohol after I'm done. Now I'm just going to make nice light cuts with a gouge. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier in the video, that's why I want to get this outside finished as much as I can. So now I don't have to worry about getting out into here. Sand it up off camera, and I'll bring it back, but I'll just show you how to take this glue off. Okay, so the glue comes off really easily with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. There we go. Just had to give it a little tap.
So here we have our offset jig.
And I ran a bead of hot melt glue in the inside, of course, because the forstner bit cut down square sides, and this is concave, and every one that I make will be convex, I guess, rather. So what I did is I ran a bead of hot melt glue around the outside edge. I put it back on the drill press, and I cut a flat surface around here. And what that does is it gives it some backing to sit in, so I don't have to worry about it tipping in the hole. So I'm going to go put this back on the faceplate, and I'll put a couple more spots of hot melt glue on this, and we'll come back and turn a hole in the face.
So I have this mounted with 3 spots of hot melt glue around the bottom side, away from the center where I'm going to cut the hole. That just keeps the glue away from my sandpaper and my chisels when I'm making this hole.
Alright, I like where the outside edge of this is. I'm not going to go any farther out on this circle. I'm just going to start bringing it in a little bit sharper. Now the other side doesn't need to be exactly the same as this, so I can do whatever we want on the other side. The important thing though is to make sure that before I take this off that I put a mark, a circle, so that I know exactly where that is going to go when I turn it upside down. Because I want to have the circle exactly in the same place, only flipped over. When you sand this, you want to stay off of this face. You've got this all sanded up nice now, and if you just touch that, even if you're using 800 grit paper, again, sometimes the edge of the paper, if it touches it, it'll scratch it. And you don't want to have to go back and start taking this out, because you'll be sanding out here, and that is no good. So keep your sandpaper in tight. So I'm going to sand this up off camera. I'll bring it back when I'm taking it out and flipping it over. I am going to draw the circle on this right now though, because I will forget if I don't do it right now. Now I know exactly where I need to be. Alright, so I've got the other side sanded up. I'm taking it out with the same method, just took the glue off with some isopropyl alcohol, put it back in. I'm centered up on the hole that I traced in there now, so my circle actually is running really nice here, you can see. So the trick on this side is the last time I cut from outside to in. This side, I want to be cutting from inside to out because I don't want to push this unsupported grain around this edge into that hole and have a chip out on the back side where that's all finished. So I'm going to be working it from the inside and out. And it doesn't matter if it's not exactly the same slope or radius as the other side. You're never going to see both sides at one time. So I'm going to go back in again with the spindle gouge and start working this from inside to out. Because of the way that the wood is convex here, it gives you a little bit of a teardrop type effect here. Perfect. Okay. Now the only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, this is a sharp edge here, I'm just going to take that edge off. What I have left to do now is I'm going to sand this up, and then we'll take it back off again, and we'll put some color on. I'll sand up off camera, I'll bring it back when I'm finished up. Okay, so everything's all sanded up now and off the lathe. So I'm going to use some plum Hampshire Sheen intrinsic color, which I've got in an airbrush container here. I'm just going to put it on with some Q-tips, the same as I did with the bracelet. And this is just bare wood. So putting on the color really is just a matter of making sure you have a nice even coat all the way around. Once this was finished and dry, I put on 2 coats of Mylands sanding sealer, just wiped it on with a paper towel. And this is a peek with the piece with the sanding sealer on, just kind of brings out the grain and the color in the burl wood. And so I use Illumi UV on this and just brush it on the same way as I did in the bracelet. Now unfortunately I did not get sunshine to cure this. So the pictures you're going to see at the end are just of the piece with the wet UV finish, and it'll sit wet until it gets the right frequency of light, which I will not get until the sun comes out. And since this video was really more about the process of making the pendant, I'm not too concerned about that. But I will show the finished pendant and bracelet together in another video, along with a few other things that folks have asked me about. So I'm going to do a midweek video at some point here soon, just to answer a few questions and show a few things that people have requested along the way. So if you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to the channel and watches the videos. I appreciate that a ton as well. If you like what you saw and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really does help the channel a ton. And I'll put a few pictures up at the end of the uncured finish. And we'll see you next time.